time and volunteered your time to make St. Cloud a better place to be. Thank you.
For those not familiar with the Warm Heads, Hands, and Hearts program, it's a program that's underwritten by this club through our local foundation, and we provide mittens and hats to 4 of the elementary schools, and it's been a fun program to be involved with. Finally, Heidi Pepper, could you come and see me for a minute? Heidi has completed the requirements to go from a red badge to a blue badge, so congratulations. And you need to give that one up, and you can have your membership packet, which we failed to give you previously. Thank you. I would love to do Happy Bucks, but we just don't have time, so we'll do those next week. At this time, I would like to call Teresa to the podium, and she will moderate the debate.
And I would like to invite our candidates up and also invite people who are over here maybe can't see. If you want, there's extra seats in the back. I actually vacated one there, and if you want to see better, just please move to an area where you can see. I'm sorry I'm standing in your way. There's not much I can do about it. I also want to let you all know that this is being actually filmed and recorded by UpTake, and it will be on YouTube starting right after this debate is finished. It's also being live streamed, so thank you for that, Michael. They do this all over the state at debates, so thank you very much for that. If anyone would like to view that or meets anyone who has interest and couldn't be here today.
Steve's not here.
Okay. Well, good afternoon again, and my name is Teresa Bonin. I'm president of the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce and a moderator again for this candidate forum for the state senate and representatives for the seats in our District 14. So joining me at the tables this morning is our District 14A incumbent representative Tama Tice and candidate Eric Putnam. Next to Eric is our incumbent representative Jim Knoblach and candidate Zach Dorholt. And our Senate candidates Jerry Ralph, Dan Wolgamott, and Stephen Zielberg. And we'd like to welcome everyone.
He's very small.
Stephen, is he on the end there?
No,
Stephen didn't come. He didn't come. Okay, well, he had told us he was coming. Well, so I guess we just have 6. The purpose of this forum is to make candidates more accessible to voters and provide a forum for participation and feedback in the political process. So our format will be, I'm going to ask questions regarding the candidates' opinions on state issues that are most important to businesses in our community, and candidates will be allowed 1.5 minutes. Since we have so many candidates, we're cutting that back to 1.5 minutes to address each question, and some of them may only be 1, but I will let you know when that occurs. We have more questions than time, so we appreciate your succinctness, and we may also allow rebuttal time at the moderator's choice depending on the candidate's responses, and particularly if they call out their opponent in any manner during the response. Our chamber staff member, Kelly Libbert, is our timekeeper. Kelly, you want to raise your hand so they see you? Great. And she will be signaling you when you have 30 seconds left, and she'll hold it up and put it down so it won't be waving in your face the whole time. And then when your time has expired, you will hear the beeper beep. So any questions on how we're going to proceed here? Oh, I got to ring it. We're good? Okay. So we're just going to start on this end and go down. So start with Tama Tice. Tell us something about yourself in 1 minute. This is just a 1-minute introduction. Tell us something about yourself and what unique capabilities, strengths, and skills that you bring to the job of state legislator. In short, why should people vote for you on November 8th?
Well, thank you. I'm glad everyone had a chance to come today. It really means a lot to see so many folks come to these events. Been married to Greg. That's one reason why you should vote for me. I have patience. And And I work with somebody who's ADHD, so I'm able to calm things down sometimes. Seriously, just being a business owner, you really run into a lot of times the taxes, the regulations. That was really frustrating to me. I'm the one that spent the time in the office, so I was the one that was spending all the time doing the extra paperwork and making sure things got done. And sometimes it was just ridiculous. It's like, you're kidding me. So that's probably the biggest reason why I got involved. And we've always had a commitment to be active in our community, and this is just another avenue to serve, and not just serve Greg and the Sons. So thank you.
And Eric Putman.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm running to represent District 14A. It's wonderful to be here, to have this opportunity to speak with all you, and to get to meet new people and see old friends. I'm a little bit anxious, though, I got to be honest, because it turns out that Kelly is a former student of mine, and that could go one of two ways. She's timekeeper, and I don't know which direction that's going to go. I'm a professor at St. John's and St. Ben's, where I teach about argument, about social movements, about communication, about bringing people together, and about advocacy and citizenship. And that's why I'm running for office. I've never wanted to run for office before, but I've always been invested in making the world a bit better. When I was a kid, when I was in 6th grade, my dad started a company, quit his job, started a company, and it failed. And what he did immediately after that was call a bunch of his friends who were in the tech industry, get a bunch of computers donated, and hang out in the library and teach kids, the children where I grew up were mostly children of migrant workers, teach them about computer literacy. And I'd never seen him so happy as when he was using his particular set of skills to make the world a better place. And that's why I'm running for office.
Thank you. And we'll move to 14B, Jim Knoblach.
Well, thank you, Teresa. I'm Jim Knoblach, State Representative for District 14B, and it's nice to be here with my fellow Rotarians and those of the rest of you who are here for the debate today. As many of you know, I was born and raised in St. Cloud. I've been a small business owner in one sort of business or another for roughly 30 years. Was in the legislature for 12 years. In 2006, decided to not run again. Went back into the private sector for 8 years, but then did run and was reelected or elected in 2014. In terms of the skills that I bring, I think one of the main skills I bring is the ability to bridge some of the partisan gaps in St. Paul. The one major finance bill that passed and became law this year was a supplemental budget bill that I was the author of. I've got a long history of successfully working with the other side and being able to accomplish things at St. Paul. And I think that's a gift that I bring, a skill that I have, and I'd like to be reelected so that I can do that both for the benefit of central Minnesota and the state as well.
Thank you. And Zach Dorholt. Zach?
Well, thanks for having us. Thanks to the Rotary for putting this on in the chamber. I'm Zach Dorholt. Some of you know me as I wear a few different hats. One, I'm a part owner of the Old Capitol Tavern. It's a little restaurant in Sauk Rapids, and won a lot of awards, if you've noticed recently. It's a good place, real small business. On my full-time job, I'm a counselor at the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center, where I work with adults who live with serious and persistent mental illness. Many of the folks I work with come right off the street or right out of a hospital program. If elected, there's quite possibly I'd be the only actual health care provider in the entire state legislature. And we all know that health care is the topic du jour here as of late, and I'd like to bring that expertise back, along with somebody who actually knows what it's like to start a business from scratch, employ people, and be directly involved with one of the most regulated industries. You know, we're a restaurant, we serve alcohol. I know what's happened here over the past couple of years from firsthand experience.
Thank you. And we move to the Senate candidates. First off is Jerry Ralph. Jerry?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I've lived in the community about a little over 30 years, raised 2 families here, was an attorney for 30 years and spent that time bringing people together who didn't even want to be in the same room and trying to find solutions to their issues. I started a small business along with a friend of mine called Lake Master Lake Maps, developed that into a thriving industry. We started out with 3 employees and ended up with 12, so I'm well aware of what happens in the business sector. I feel that I've got the life experience to be able to cross party lines, to be able to talk to people. No one has a monopoly on good ideas. We have to be willing to take all ideas, put them into what I call the crucible of reason, take them to their logical consequence, and then find out what works and what doesn't. And I believe I have the skill to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan Wogamot, also our Senate candidate.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Wolgamott. I live here in St. Cloud with my wife and our 2 daughters. I work as a realtor at Century 21, where we are a proud member of our 5-star accredited St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce. And I also work as an assistant high school football coach. So every day I get to work directly with businesses and families and kids in our community, and I see firsthand the consequences of the partisan name-calling and gridlock. I've had the privilege of knocking on thousands of doors in the past year and a half, and I've learned that there are so many challenges facing our community. And to take those on, we're going to have to move on from the negative, name-calling, old way of politics and elect a leader who will bring positive energy to the legislative process. I'm very proud to be the only candidate in this race with the maturity to run a positive and solutions-based campaign, and that's the kind of leadership I want to bring to the Senate. I'm running to do what I do all the time in real estate: bring people together, find mutually beneficial solutions, and get the job done.
Thank you. And we will start on that end with you, Dan, and we'll just work our way back this way for this next question. This will be for a minute and a half. So if you are elected, what will be your top 2 priorities during this 2017 legislative session, and why did you choose those 2?
If elected to the state Senate, I will focus a lot of energy on the top 2 priorities laid out in our state's constitution: education and transportation. I'm very passionate about making sure that every child in the state of Minnesota, regardless of background, has a world-class education that starts really in the womb and goes all the way through our higher learning institutions. Right now, only 40 to 50% of our kids enter kindergarten ready for it. That's unacceptable. We've got to change that. So by focusing increased investment in early learning opportunities, making sure that we're able to recruit and retain high-quality teachers. We're especially hurting in areas of math and science and special education. In making sure that our institutions of higher learning, St. Cloud State, St. Cloud Technical and Community College, are getting the investment from the state that they deserve to make sure that we are able to attract and maintain a world-class workforce. More to say on that, but I also want to talk about transportation. Clearly, for the past 25 years, we've been lagging in our transportation investments. Through my experiences at Chamber, I've talked to several business leaders who are here in this room who have been feeling the pain and time wasted on the roads and the gridlock. So we need to come together, find a dedicated funding solution for a long-term comprehensive transportation plan.
Thank you. And Jerry, what would your 2 top priority issues be?
Well, the top priority I think that I have is an interrelated one. Dan referred to some of it as education, but it's also jobs, and the 2 are very much intertied. We need to create partnerships in our community. There's a perfect example of that called the Partnership for Student Success. The object is to get young people started on some career path, not necessarily knowing what they're going to do, but maybe help them eliminate what they don't want to do. This is just one example. So I believe that we need to start in the schools, make sure that our children have a top-class education, that they can read, write, and do math. Back to the 3 R's. We need to support early childhood education. We need to support closing the achievement gap. We need to provide teachers with the tools to teach to high standards, not to standardized tests, not to be standardized teachers. So I support those endeavors. The second one is obviously transportation, and I think everybody understands the need for it. I think we need to complete the Representative Knoblach introduced a very, very intelligent and well thought out bill that basically took excess ridership that was nobody's in the seat and brings it up here. effectively done, that reduces the cost of the subsidy that we now pay for ridership on the North Star.
Thank you, Jerry. Zach, what are your 2 priority issues when you're successful?
So this question's been asked of us at many forums, and it kind of seems to change sometimes. And for everybody, for a good reason. Right now, for me, it has to be healthcare. I live this field, I work in this field. The drastic changes that have been brought upon us from the federal government, the changes within healthcare itself, and how we deal with it, how we talk about it, and most importantly, the care of the people that we are trying to help. So, for me, that has to be the top priority, is lending my expertise to that. I've done everything from filling out prior authorizations. I don't know if anybody's ever had to fill out a prior authorization for a client for treatment which their insurance company already covers. It's kind of redundant, little things like that. Or having to respond to a crisis call with police for someone who is seriously mentally ill, so that we have a positive intervention. Along with that, getting mental health professionals into the schools so that kids get the help where they go at school. They're not going to get that help at home all the time. Mom and dad aren't always there. If they can get the help at school, teachers can teach. And the second part, the short answer, is finishing everything that was left on the table that's waiting for us, from bonding to transportation and a tax bill.
Thank you. Jim, what are your 2 top priorities?
Well, as Zach kind of said, that's kind of a tough question, because there are different kind of priorities out there to talk about. One thing for me is I will likely be the chair of the Ways and Means Committee again when the legislature starts up again, presuming that the public sees fit to reelect me again. And so I've got responsibilities in that job to make sure that not only is the budget balanced, but that we look at all the different needs of the state in totality, all the different subjects, and try to allocate the resources that we have in the right way to meet those needs, while also making sure that we have a good business climate and a good climate for creating jobs and making this a welcoming place for people to move. We have a crisis in healthcare in this state right now. We'll probably get into this later on. I know I've had some discussions with Senator Jim Abler, who is a practicing chiropractor and kind of the healthcare guru on the Republican side in the Senate. But we need to do something about the crisis in MNsure. I think that public safety is always job number 1 in terms of making sure that we have a safe, crime-free community for all of our citizens. Transportation and infrastructure are issues that, unfortunately, we passed those bills in the House. They didn't get passed in the Senate this last year. We do need to do something on that area. And finally, education, dealing with the achievement gap. The special ed cross subsidy here in District 742 is a big issue too.
Thank you. And Eric, what would your 2 top priority issues be?
I'm an educator. I've taught at the university level for almost 20 years, over 20 years now, actually. I started when I was 2. My wife, as some of you may know, is a principal at Kennedy Community School. We're deeply invested in public education. And even though I've taught professionally as an educator for so long, I've also volunteered in the public schools for 10 years. I've done professional development for 742 for the past 5 years, mostly on a volunteer basis. I've also done professional development in Sartell, but I charge them. I'm deeply invested in our public schools, and my priority when I get to St. Paul will be education. That is my primary priority, because I think that a lot of the other issues that we face are functions of education or can be dealt with when we deal with education first. So one of the things I want to do for education is to lower the walls between nonprofits, higher education in our public schools. A lot of the professional development that we do here could be done much more efficiently, much cheaper, and better if we had faculty from our local universities become more involved in our public schools, and had our universities become more involved in the public schools more generally, have more students in our public schools, have more nonprofits involved in, local nonprofits involved in mentoring and after-school programs. These are all things that I can facilitate once I'm in office. Secondly, my second big priority, given is that I'm someone who studies democracy and citizenship, I think that we have a crisis in our civic culture right now. You see it every day when you walk to the mailbox. What we need is more time. What we need is to renew our civic culture by enacting campaign finance reform and legislative reform immediately.
Thank you. And thank you for finishing your sentence and moving on. I know a minute and a half goes quick. Tama, what are your two top priorities?
When we get back, our top priorities are public safety, transportation, and education. Constitutionally, that's what we need to make a priority, and I do. But I also make aging and long-term care a priority as well. I'm vice chair of aging and long-term care, and we were very excited that this last year, and it was a tough sell, we did get enough funding, $138 million, to go to nursing homes and the reimbursement. Actually create a reimbursement system. Before, it was just a percentage that went no matter what inflation rates were. That was very exciting, and to learn more about what's available out there. I'm very excited to get back because hopefully we'll have some studies to say which products maybe we can push forward. And what I hear from a lot of people at the door is, keep me at home. I don't want to go anywhere. Keep me at home. And so that's what I'm thinking we're going to be doing, is looking for ways to keep people at home. And the second thing that we've been doing in the last year is there's a child care task or force out there, and we have been touring around finding out what's been happening with child care, because we're losing a lot of providers to the point where it's almost a crisis. If you're a young family and maybe if you have one child in daycare and you want to have another, you got to check in with your daycare provider to see if she'll have a space for you. So now you're having children based on when your daycare person can take a child. That's really exciting, isn't it? And we hear a lot about the regulations again, too. So I think that'll be a really big priority, too, to make sure we have our workforce able to work and have people take care of the kids. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to mix up the answering now a little bit, and Jim, we'll start with you on this next question. Mix up the rotation. And this is kind of a long one. It was submitted by a Rotary Club member.
That's true, false.
Insurance carriers that are leaving the individual medical insurance market. The few that are offering coverage for 2017 have said that they are putting on capacity limits as to the number of people they will insure. So we're going to end up with a situation where there are not enough positions for the people who need insurance. So what plans do you have to address and fix insurance carriers leaving and limiting coverage, and the large increases in premiums for individuals and MNsure?
Well,
In a minute and a half, Jim.
Well, thanks for asking that. You know, 5 years ago, we had what was probably the best health insurance healthcare system in the country. At 8%, we had the lowest percentage of people who were uninsured in the country. The great majority of that 8% were people who actually did qualify for public programs like medical assistance and Minnesota Care, but had just chosen to not sign up for them. Most of the rest were people that were young people that, as we're seeing right now, just for making the decision to not get health insurance. Then in 2013 and 14, we went ahead and passed the MNsure bill down at the legislature the 2 years before I was in the legislature, and the adoption of that and other reforms that year have really decimated the market. And so now we see these premium increases coming home to roost of 50 to 67%. We see these caps where people are in a position where they can't even potentially get insurance. We've spent $400 million on a MNsure website that doesn't work. This has been a disaster for people. It's a complicated area, but three things I'd say we should do. Number one, I'd say we should scrap the MNsure system, sign up for the federal exchange. I think it's going the way of MNsure in a couple years, but at least they've got a website that works, and those people would get some immediate relief. Secondly, we ought to allow for-profit health care companies to sell their products in Minnesota. We don't right now. The biggest company in the country, United Healthcare, is based right in the Twin Cities. Why not let them go ahead and sell their health insurance here? Finally, I would say that we should probably look at bringing back the MCHA pool for people who are having a hard time getting insurance, who are high-cost people. That worked before for getting these people that had difficulties with getting insurance that was affordable.
Thank you. Zach? If any of you want me to repeat parts of the question, I'm happy to do that too. It's pretty long.
I think the gist of the question was, what do we do about these insurance companies that have dropped people from the individual plans? So day one, when I get back there, is to prevent them from doing that. If they're allowed to make money off of group plans by selling group policies to whether it's Target Corporation or Centricare or whomever, they should not be allowed to just pull out of the individual market. That is shameful. That is wrong what they did. So one, we prevent them from doing that. We're talking about the insurance companies, okay, right here, right now. MNsure is nothing but a marketplace from which you buy a policy. Two, I do support a public option. That would be maybe Minnesota Care. We expand that, allow people to buy into that. We do it at a sliding fee scale. Minnesota Care works, not MNsure, Minnesota Care. Okay, that's what people say, that's kind of the insurance program for the working poor. I do support a single payer system. That's a big reach. I'd like to work towards that. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I'm going to continue to have that conversation. And we can't just scrap MNsure. We got millions of dollars from the federal government to expand Medicaid. The people I work with, if we scrap MNsure or our version of the Affordable Care Act, and because of that, people lost their lives, and I'm not going to let that happen again.
Thank you. Tama, you're next on this question.
I don't know where to start. There are so many things to say, and it's been a huge concern because I've had insurance agents calling me saying, I'm getting out of this because I'm not making money. And how do I advise my clients? She talked about a farmer who was not quite retirement age, and their premiums were $3,100 a month. She said, what do I tell them to do? I don't know. I really don't know. You know, do you not pay insurance and hope nothing catastrophic happens until you turn 65 so you don't lose the farm? These are the phone calls that we're getting. People who thought they were insured, but then when they went to the doctor, found out they weren't. MNsure is an exchange, but it's not working. We had the Office of Legislative Audit come in, and Mr. Nobles and his staff told us it's going to take at least another $200 million just to get the website to work. And that doesn't mean anybody's getting insured. We've had to give more money to counties because they've got so many navigators because it's so troublesome. Maybe that isn't the perfect answer, but I think just getting people insured is the better answer. And if that means that we drop MNsure and go to the exchange, at least we know that's working and they can get coverage. I can't tell you how many times people say, I'm going to be one of them that's not going to have health insurance on the first. It's terrible because I really think we would have done a better job if we would have figured out what Minnesota and some of the other top low percentage folks in the country did and look at those plans and do something that would have been very similar, but that at least wouldn't have caused people to not get insurance.
Thank you. Eric.
Well, this is such a complicated and profound and deeply personal problem for so many people, and it's something that we're hearing about so much nowadays because of the tremendous increases that we've all seen advertised or discussed recently. So clearly MNsure is something that has to be addressed immediately. And not to apologize for it, but I do think that it isn't the pure evil that it's often considered to be. I mean, when we think about what's happening to college-age students nowadays, incredible loans and debts that they've got, and yet now they can be on their insurance until their parents' insurance until they're 26. Now, MNsure wasn't a great thing, but we've had a precipitous decline in our already very low number of folks who are uninsured. We went from 8%, as Jim mentioned, to 4.5% we are now. Again, that's not great, but it was an incredibly ambitious project. And the point that I want to make is that you don't start from scratch, you always start from where you are. The idea of just throwing everything out and then starting over brand new is not really realistic because you can never do that. You always start from where you are and you build from there. One of the things that I'm quite optimistic about after having participated in 7 or 8 or 900 forums over the past couple weeks is the consistent commitment that we all have now to some sense of universal insurance that we didn't have 5 years ago. People realize what a big problem this is now, and they're much more committed to it. We have a tremendous amount of political will not to throw out Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, or MNsure, but we have political will now to fix it, and that's good.
Dan, now we're down to your end.
Well, clearly these the skyrocketing premiums that the 5% of Minnesotans who get their insurance from the individual market is unacceptable. My wife has worked as a healthcare outreach paralegal, so we know firsthand how important it is to have good, affordable health insurance and how scary it is when you don't. So we have got to provide some immediate relief for the families that are experiencing these premium increases. So I absolutely am supportive of having a special session to deal with this immediately and to pass the Minnesota Health Insurance premium tax credits to help offset those families whose budgets are being decimated by these skyrocketing premiums. And we need to come together as both parties and tackle the long-term reasons why healthcare costs are rising. Prescription drug costs, an aging population, over-reliance on high-cost services like the emergency room. We've got to get real about what these problems are. Now, MNsure, when the insurance companies cited the reasons why they were raising premiums, none of them cited MNsure as a reason. MNsure is a marketplace, a tool to go on and shop for plans. So for fear-mongering and boogeymanning with that isn't going to get us anywhere. We've got to come together as parties, provide immediate relief. Some other ideas to stabilize the market would be to increase eligibility for Minnesota Care so that more people could buy into that regardless of income. And there are many more things we need to do, but we've got to come together and make sure that every Minnesotan has quality, affordable health insurance.
Thank you. And Jerry?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to understand something, and I think Representative Knoblach talked on that. There is not an equation between insurance and the delivery of health care. Just because you're insured doesn't mean that you have something that, number one, is affordable, or two, that is going to provide you the health care you need. If you have a $10,000 deductible, $150 copay, and you're still paying $800 a month in insurance, how are you going to pay those costs between where your insurance kicks in and what you have to spend out of pocket? I think that's something we need to address. More importantly, yes, MNsure is a marketplace, but if it's a marketplace that doesn't work, that doesn't provide insurance to people, that doesn't provide affordable insurance, then we need to look at it and do something with it. Now, some people have said, well, we don't want to start all over again. Well, I think one thing we should look at, and this has been referred to, is let's go to the federal plan. We know it works. We know it provides insurance for people, and it will at least give us a starting point. The last thing I would say is we need to find a way to bring health care into a, I will call it competitive arena, but we need to allow people to buy insurance across state lines. You don't hear any insurance advertisements saying, I saved $750 with XYZ insurance company, like you do for your auto insurance. So we need to get some kind of an approach that brings that to the table.
Thank you. Jerry, you'll be starting the next question, so hang on to the mic. This question has to do with the tax environment. Minnesota's tax structure is often cited for its impact on our ability to attract new businesses into the state, which creates jobs. Businesses and persons of accumulated wealth are reportedly leaving the state in search of better tax climates. So first of all, do you agree with that assessment? And if so, how would you make the tax environment more competitive for existing and future businesses and retirees in our state?
Okay, thank you. This is important. We, according to at least one and maybe more nationally recognized organizations, Minnesota ranks 47th in the friendliness for tax environment. We have a wonderful workforce. We're 4th or 5th in the country. We have a wonderful environment, and if you don't mind, a couple of cold days. But we tax businesses and we regulate them far more than anybody I shouldn't say anybody, but many people in the country, many states in the country. You can go next door, and if you want to start a business in South Dakota, you get a stack of paper about that high, and they bring you in. We need to look at that. One of the things that I think we need to look at is the statewide business property tax. Business property owners in this state pay both local property taxes and they also pay a tax to the state that goes into the general fund. That's a double tax on a business, and I think that's something we need to look strongly at. I think we need to find ways to encourage businesses to grow. I was the actually worked to start the Central Minnesota Initiative Foundation. I was involved in their creation, and I actually benefited from it when I started my small business, Lake Master. So these are recyclable, no cost to taxpayer programs that encourage businesses to come to Minnesota, and that's what we have to do. We have to encourage them to come here.
Dan.
Well, as a member of our local Chamber of Commerce and a member of our Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, I hear on a regular basis how our tax laws and our regulations are impacting businesses, and I am so committed to making sure that Minnesota is a great place for small businesses to thrive. They're the backbone of our economy. So yeah, we've got to make sure we're taking a look at ways to eliminate red tape to make our climate more efficient for small businesses. I do support the sales tax exemption for business equipment. Absolutely, as a realtor, I know that property taxes are a burden. I see that every day, so we've got to make sure we've got good property tax relief for our small businesses. One place I really support is the Minnesota Trade Organization, which will act as a conduit for businesses throughout the state of Minnesota to expand their sales throughout the country so that we can get that increased business. But yeah, I'm very much committed to working with our members of our chamber and members of our business community to making sure that Minnesota is a great place for small businesses.
Thank you. We'll move down to this end now. Eric.
You know, I think we need to start any conversation about taxes with just a brief moment of just chilling out and being a grown-up and realizing that nobody actually likes taxes. No one gets pleasure from taxing anybody else. But there's a difficult relationship between our power of our workforce and the quality of our life and the taxes that we levy. We have the quality workforce that we have, and we have the quality of life that we have partially because of our tax climate. Businesses stay here because we have a quality of life that's worth living with. So for me, I'm no fan of taxes. I don't like them. But when you walk on the doors and you talk to people, people typically don't mind taxes as much if they see the benefit, if it's clear to them where the money is going. And so for me, when we think about tax climates, that's a very important issue for us to consider, is how transparent is our government about our taxes, how responsive is our government to the needs of small businesses when it comes to specific taxes and regulations. You know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Louis Johnston. He's an economist and professor at St. John's and a friend of mine. He's my advisor guy when it comes to things economical. And he was talking recently about just how good our climate is in a number of ways. There was that Center for American Progress, the Center for American Experience report that was released, I think, a couple months ago that says that Minnesota doesn't grow as fast as the other states that are around it, and that's because we're already doing so well.
Thank you, Eric. Tama.
This summer, I took the opportunity to send a survey out to every person or every household in my district. And I wanted to find out certain things, like what did they want me to do? What are the issues that were close to them? And the number one was wasteful government spending. And I think that if we take that seriously, if I take that seriously, then that means that I need to look at what are we really spending money on. I already told you what the three priorities are: transportation, public safety, education. But we also need to look at what do we really need to spend money on? Why do we need all this money? And I would say there's a lot of projects that really do deserve that money. But are we really doing everybody a service? If we didn't spend as much, we wouldn't have to tax as much. So that goes hand in hand with, you know, are we really overreaching and doing too much? Do we really do a good job of serving the interests of everyone? To me, that's a big thing. And I hear that a lot from the people that I talk to, is how much are we really spending, and what are we spending all this money on? When we talk about transportation, and you know, right away it's a gas tax, and I don't believe that's right. I do think we need to start looking at dedicating some funds. But there's a lot of people that don't want to take that out of the general fund. But I think that's one of our responsibilities. We need to do that, and we haven't been doing that. So when it comes to taxing, I think we need to be realistic of how much money do we need to do what we really need to do.
Thank you. Zach?
So I think the question, part of it was, do you agree with the assessment?
Right, that people are leaving Minnesota due to our tax structure, and then if so, how would you make that more competitive to keep them here?
Sure. So I don't really agree with the assessment that people are leaving because of the tax structure. We will always have people leaving for warmer weather, those who can afford to do so. Being someone who is actively involved with balancing the books of a small restaurant, I can tell you the specifics of where tax burdens, like the double burden kind of Jerry mentioned here and there. For example, for anybody in the service industry, bars and restaurants, their employees, they get a wage, and then they also have their tips. Their tips are taxed, that the employer's taxed on their tips. I don't know if you knew that, as a wage, but it's not a wage. Okay, so this is one of those specific ideas we can work on, because this is what it has to come down to, is some specifics. When we talk about property taxes, property tax relief for small businesses, yes, that is very significant at the top of the list for tax reform, but I want to make sure it goes to real small businesses, not huge conglomerates that own property all over the entire globe. The reason those companies who are all over the globe are here is because we have a very well-educated workforce. And that's why they stay here, and that's why they continue to come here, and that's why they continue to grow here. And that's why I will always turn this conversation back into a reinvestment in an educated 21st century workforce.
And Jim?
Well, before answering this question, I just quickly want to go back to the health care one and just make it clear that, first of all, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is the law of the land. So if we scrap MNsure, students, people are still going to be covered up to age 26 by their parents. And there are several other states, or there are some other states who, like Minnesota, started out with their own system, scrapped it, and have gone on to the federal exchange. So we wouldn't be the first, and I certainly don't want to be kicking people off medical assistance, and I want to make that clear that that would not be my intention to do if we went to the federal exchange. But to this question, obviously there's a clear difference between my opponent and I. Of course people are leaving Minnesota because of the tax climate. There's all kinds of studies that show they're leaving Minnesota because of the tax climate. Go to the Center for the American Experiment study. Talk to people who are accountants. I sit on, and it's not just taxes that we're losing because of this, because of people fleeing. I sit on a nonprofit board here in town with a very generous guy who, as a result of the tax increases that went through a couple years ago, decided that he's going to move his residence. And, this has an effect on our leadership in the community. It has an effect on people who are going to be active in our nonprofits. It has an effect on what they're going to be given to charity in our community in the future, too. This has lots of effects on us. According to the Census Bureau, we're the fourth highest tax state in the country. When I left this legislature back in 2006, we had gotten out of the top 10. So we are a high tax state. It is affecting people, and there are a variety of taxes that I'd be happy to talk about looking to address how we can stem this tide.
Okay, we've got one more question, and then we'll go to closing arguments, and I really encourage you all to stick with us here as we try to wrap this up before 1:30. So back to transportation. Transportation infrastructure in our state continues to decline while the legislature can't seem to come to a solution that's agreeable to everyone. So what's your best solution for ending the gridlock and getting transportation funded more adequately, and where would those funds come from? And Zach, you are first on this one.
So, flashbacks from 2 years ago when transportation was kind of top of the issue. Doesn't seem like very much was done. When I was there, we didn't pass a huge bill, but we did get some things done. I was part of a group that helped establish the Corridors of Commerce program, which helped widen the lane on 94, so down towards St. Michael area. So that was something we actually did something to help relieve or push another bottleneck a little further down the road. The bottom line is MnDOT's been long-term to raise our own gas, challenged within because we have that conversation. We have, and it's not just roads and bridges, it's the infrastructure below us, water, sewer, wastewater treatment facility. Keep that in mind as well.
Jim?
Well, we did pass a major transportation bill in the last 2 years, probably was the biggest one ever. Did have a significant increase in transit for the St. Cloud area in it. Introduced an additional new program for small cities in rural Minnesota that are having a hard time with their transportation. But I certainly would say that we need to put significantly more money into our transportation system, though we also need to look at how we can build roads and bridges cheaper. And there are things I could talk about in that area too, because the cost of building a mile of road over the last 25 years has vastly exceeded the increase in inflation in terms of the cost of cost increases there. You know, it's a hard issue at the legislature. I mean, the Democrats had control in 2013 and 14 of the House, the Senate, the governorship. They still weren't able to pass a major reform bill. Didn't happen this last year either. That's partly because it's not just a partisan issue. You've got rural versus metro, transit versus road, core city versus suburban cities. But you know, a couple things I think we should look at doing. We do have some bonding capacity in this state that I would say we should spend more on in terms of transportation and infrastructure. Beyond that also, we have a budget surplus. I thought the proposal we had amongst the Republicans this last year, where we dedicate taxes that are related to transportation, like the sales tax on auto parts, the sales tax on leased cars, things like that are now going to the general fund. We should take those taxes as a dedicated revenue stream and dedicate them to our roads and bridges, and that would provide significant money that we would need to make progress on this issue.
Thank you. And Eric?
You know, obviously transportation is one of those huge issues that's discussed every year, and clearly it has economic implications. You know, the Minnesota Miracle of the 20th century was a function of not just the existence of our infrastructure, but how it was actually planned and orchestrated. You can contrast the Minnesota highway system with that in Illinois, where all the roads go to Chicago. In Minnesota, those roads crisscross and cover the entire state. That was an essential component to the Minnesota Miracle that made our economy as strong as it is. But transportation is also a moral issue to me, because it's where we have to come together with other people who may or may not be like us, especially in terms of transit. So I think transportation is an incredibly significant issue. Now the question, as I heard it, had two parts. One was, what would you do about it? And two was, how would you make it happen? How would you deal with the gridlock that literally and figuratively stops any kind of movement in transportation? For me, my approach is two parts. One, whatever infrastructure plan that we adopt or approach that we take has to be multimodal. It has to consider roads, bridges, alternative transportation like bicycle paths and those kinds of things, as well as transit. All of those things have to be on the table. Secondly, in terms of funding it, what I would do immediately is appeal to the FAST Act program, which is a federal program that subsidizes and supports innovative ways of thinking about transportation. So in Oregon, for example, they used FAST Act funding to come up with something called the Origo plan that they are now testing in Oregon to have a kind of usage tax. And I would also consider the gas tax as a possibility too. So the way that I would do it would be to have everything on the table when we begin that conversation.
Tama?
Sometimes it's hard to talk after Jim, because Jim is, of course, puts together the supplemental budget, so he's like the budget guy, and he knows all the numbers, and you heard a lot about the same things that I would say, that we have been trying to work on this, and that it did get stalled. With that being said, the bonding chair, Chair Torkelson, also worked really hard on putting together a bonding bill that had some of the projects that weren't being done. We saw a lot of grade separations, railroad separations, and work like that. And these were still projects that needed to get done, but for some reason weren't on the Department of Transportation's list of things that need to get done. So we were trying to find ways to fund some of these things that weren't happening because there wasn't a transportation bill. And I alluded before that I thought that we do need to set aside some funds, dedicated funds, because even though it's one of our priorities, we're not making it one of those priorities. So if that means that we're going to dedicate the taxes and have it go to that, then we need to do it before we let our roads get this troublesome. I've been working with the I-94 corridor for quite a while. And it's to the point now where a couple of folks have kind of hinted to me that they're not sure that it really needs to come up to St. Cloud. And I've offered our extra bedroom. If you think it doesn't need to be done, come and stay at my house and drive. Because that's a shakedown cruise because of all the truck traffic. But it just seems like it isn't the priority. And I keep harping on that one. We just have to have that happen. So that's where I'm hitting it. We need to have more dedicated funds.
Jerry?
I think the big problem here is we all agree about too much. I think everybody agrees. We need to do something about our transportation situation in the state. Some people want to dedicate this, some people want to dedicate that. I agree with much of what's been said here that we should look at all the options. I believe that we need a stable, permanent, dedicated form of funding for transportation. We have too long been ad hoc, kind of cold patching the problem. We need to do a cut and cover. We need to get a stable system. Is the gas tax stable? I don't know. Gas usage, we hope, is going to be declining as years go forward, as cars become more efficient, as we start using electric vehicles. So maybe we need to look at some other forms of funding that. I think vehicle tax or vehicle repair parts tax, those are creative ideas, and I think that's what we have to come together, is put all the ideas on the table. Let's test them with reason. Specifically, I agree. I-94, that's another no-brainer. We need to finish that third lane because we want our businesses here in St. Cloud to be able to get their materials and deliver their products. And right now, they have trouble doing that. There's a tremendous impact on the trucking industry because of bad roads. They're losing money.
And Dan, you've got the final word on transportation today.
Well, if there's one thing I've learned from all my door knocking and all my conversations with business leaders, we have got to come up with a long-term, dedicated funding solution for our transportation needs. Not just to maintain, but to ensure that they can handle future needs. What we can't do is have any more of these short-term fixes, these Band-Aid solutions, and we can't take money from the general fund. We clearly need to fix our roads, but we can't do it on the backs of our students and our seniors. What we need to do is have a plan that has money for roads and bridges, ensures that we can keep up with the growing demand for transit, and also works for businesses to make sure that we're not losing time and money and resources in the gridlocked roads. And absolutely, I really agree with what Eric said, that it is of the utmost importance that we keep all options on the table. I'm open at taking a look at Representative Howe's bill for automobile parts. The gas tax is an option. As has been said, that does have diminishing value as vehicles become more and more fuel efficient. It's also been mentioned bonding is another solution. We need to not be taking any cards away. We've got to keep them all on the table so we can handle this transportation funding crisis that's 25 years in the making.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to just closing comments, and you can each have a minute to close it out today. We're going to start with Dan on that end.
Well, thank you, Chamber members and Rotarians and members of the public for being here. Again, my name's Dan. I live here in St. Cloud. I get to work every day with businesses and families and kids in our community as a realtor and an assistant high school football coach. And we have so many issues, some that were said here, some that weren't said. We ran out of time, but we've got to elect leaders that are going to work together and find mutually beneficial solutions and get the job done. We've got to move on from the negative, name-calling, old way of politics. We've got to quit making excuses for the partisan games. We've got to work together. So if you live in District 14, I ask for your vote to bring some positive energy to the legislative process, bring people together, and get the job done for our businesses and families here in St. Cloud.
Thank you. And Jerry, Ralph.
Well, also, I want to thank all of you for being here and listening attentively. I can see a lot of heads nodding as we were talking. I believe that what I bring to the table is maturity and experience. As I said, I've lived here 30 years. I was an attorney for 30 years. I'm a former Marine Vietnam vet. And I have the life experience that will enable me to do what everybody seems to be talking about, and that is bring people together. My experience as an attorney, I was a city attorney in a small town in southern Minnesota, so I'm familiar with the legislative process. I've done a lot of tax-exempt finance work, so I'm very familiar with the bonding process and understand what that entails. And I believe that I can bring a voice of reason and a clear, concise, and critical thinking to the legislature. I would ask for your support on November 8th. I'm Jerry Rolfe, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. And Eric. Yeah, I'm mixing it up. Sorry. I'm mixing it up.
Keeping us guessing. This area is a wonderful place. I've lived here for 10 years. I've been in Minnesota for 20 years, but I've lived in St. Cloud proper for 10 years. And with every year, I become more and more impressed and excited and glad that I live here. But it faces some very real challenges. We're at a point of transition. We're in an ambiguous space. We're changing demographically while we grow. That's a tremendous pressure. It's a tremendous stress. We have Minneapolis problems in Foley funding. We need to do something here with these problems. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to run for office, is because of these moments of transition that we're involved in right now. When I asked my daughter, I'm a primary caregiver of my kids because my wife works so much, and I asked my daughter if I could run for office. She's 12. And she looked at me and she said, I guess so, Dad, but then you're going to have to talk to people, and people suck. And I thought, yeah, not the best choice of language, or where she got that from. But then I also thought that she's only 12, and cynicism is never the end, never the beginning of anything. It is always an end. And faced with the problems that we have, I think we need optimistic, visionary leadership, and I hope to provide that.
Thank you. Tana.
We've been spending too much time together because I just told Eric we sat and folded our hands at the same time. So I'm kind of glad we're almost to the end of it. But with that being said, I love what I do. This is my community. I've been here for 36 years. I volunteered. Both Greg and I just believe in being a part of the community. I enjoy talking with folks. There are times, we don't agree, but there's still something to be learned in those discussions. I always encourage people to come and see me. I'm very excited to go back, and I'm going to take up some issues that are a little bit tougher, that'll be a little bit harder. But I think that it's worth it, because this community needs certain things. I just really love what I do, and I love my community. So for me, it's a job. I don't like being up till 3, 4 in the morning and getting up at 9, or being back to work at 9.
Heck.
Quick. Haven Township. So you're probably sick and tired of seeing our faces shoved in your mailbox, on TV, on the radio, on Angry Birds, or wherever else you see it. You are sitting at the epicenter of the... There's been more outside money spent on this race than any other race, 2 times in a row, now the 3rd time in a row. It's absolutely ridiculous, it's absurd, and it's adding to the cynicism that Eric's kids and many other young people have, and I'm glad the people here have chosen to rise above that. There are few too many people who are doing that. I just want to remind you that 70% of the $1 million that was spent on the race between Jim and myself 2 years ago came from these outside groups. And we have to do something about that if we're going to get young people and the other disenfranchised to engage again. We need to pass the Disclose Act. We need to know where people are getting their funding for these races so we can get back to having some conversation, not just confrontation. I'm pleased. I will never have, and I never will send out an ad attacking my opponent, and I'm going to continue to provide a positive campaign from here on forward.
Thank you. And Jim.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. The Pioneer Press newspaper did a study recently over the last 2 years looking at the voting records of legislators in the House of Representatives. And after they did their study, they named me as having the most independent voting record of any House Republican. Now, that doesn't mean that I voted with the Democrats more than any House Republican, although I did vote with the Democrats more than many Republicans. It also meant that I sometimes didn't vote with the Republicans and the Democrats and chose to go what I thought was the right way. And I bring that up because even though I am not afraid to vote for what I think is right and don't always go along with my party or the other party, I've also been effective at getting things done in the legislature. As I mentioned before, the one major bill that got done down there this year, the supplemental budget bill, was the bill that I was the author of in the House, and I was able to work with my Senate counterpart and the governor to get a bill that was passed in the House, the Senate, and then signed by the governor. And there were a lot of great things in that bill for central Minnesota as well as the state. And I'd appreciate the chance to go back and again be a bridge between the two parties to accomplish things for our state.
Thank you. And let's thank our candidates today. I also want to thank UpTake, and we will provide a link to that off the Chamber website. If you have people who are interested, you can call the Chamber. Thank you all, and thank you, audience.
Nice job, Jerry. We'll see you
And
soon.
thank you, Teresa.
Like tonight?
Finally,
Seen a few
for
hours.
next week, our first meeting in November, we have Lewis Johnston and King Banyan giving us an economic update. And finally, if your name is Jeff Free, you are the loot winner.
Very nice. There goes. Tamma wants to do it.
And we are adjourned. Sorry, Tamma. Thank you, Jerry.
Test. Okay, hang on. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hey, it's Mike McIntyre at the UpTake. Glad you could join us. We're going to try to get a few post-debate interviews. We'll see here what happens, all right?
Mike McIntyre from the UpTake.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi. You got like a couple minutes to answer some questions?
I guess so, sure.
All right, test. Okay, we do have audio. So first off, I mean, this has been one of those races where a lot of outside money has been coming in. Your opponent mentioned that. Did you want to talk at all about the outside money that's been coming into the race? I know you've mentioned it in the past.
Oh, yeah, no, I've talked about that in the past. Believe me, as a candidate, I don't like the outside money coming into the race either for a number of reasons, other than including even some of them that are in favor of you sometimes kind of mess up your campaign strategy and aren't necessarily where you want to be going. And, you know, you may not want to be doing negative advertising, and suddenly they're doing negative advertising and people are thinking it's you. You know, from my standpoint, in terms of the Disclose Act, what I've found about that when I've looked through it is it tends to apply regulations to a lot of organizations that traditionally have supported Republicans while not applying those same kind of regulations to unions and other organizations that have supported Democrats. And so I'm open to something that treats everyone fairly, but my sense has been, from when I've looked at it, that that particular piece of legislation doesn't do the full job it should do.
Okay. You also mentioned that people are leaving the state because of higher taxes. State Revenue Department from 2014 said that that's not the case. 15% actually more are millionaires and 6% are more in the upper bracket since they passed the new tier. I mean, are you referring to something else, or what are you talking about there?
Oh, well, in the first place, In terms of the state revenue department, I don't really think they did that study right. I mean, the taxes were raised in 2013 and 14. It takes a little while for something like that to filter through. People need to decide, yes, I'm going to leave. They need to sell their business. They need to leave their home. They need to sell their home. It takes a while for something like that to filter through. If you talk to people in the accounting profession like I have, if you look at the Center for the American Experiment Study, there's all kinds of data out there that people are making the decision to relocate their residence because of Minnesota's tax climate.
Then why would it be going up instead of at least staying stable or going down then during those years that after it was passed?
Well, because the economy is getting better. I mean, the general economy, the stock market has gone up. So as the stock market's going up, you've got more people that are making money. But you can't just look at the overall number of people that are in a particular tax bracket. You've got to look at individual people and see what their behavior changes are. You've got to look at how many people have changed their residence to a different state. You may have more people in a higher tax bracket, but you would have had even more if you hadn't made the changes that were made.
Anything else you want to add today about how the race is going, or any comment that you didn't get to make during the debate or the forum? Because I know there's been many of these.
No, we've had, I don't know, this is our 13th forum or something like that, and we have 3 or 4 more, and that's fine. I mean, I enjoy being able to talk to people, and I'm pleased to be able to represent the people in my community and look forward to the opportunity to do so again.
Representative, thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Sure thing.
Yep.
All right, that was Representative Jim Knoblach, who is running for re-election here in St. Cloud. Let me see if we can get Zach Dorholt here, if he is available. Zach, do you have a minute for us?
Sure.
Okay, we are live, but let me get this set up. Everybody's taller than me, so the camera's kind of pointing up. I apologize for that. Let me just make one more adjustment. Okay. First question. Obviously, news today or news yesterday was. I'm gonna have you step just a little bit closer here. Okay. There you go. News yesterday was that President Obama has endorsed your campaign. Is that correct? And you want to talk about that?
That is correct. I guess he chose to reach down to what they call down ticket races, and 150 people from U.S. Congress to state representatives were endorsed by the president, so that was quite an honor.
So that doesn't mean he's coming down to campaign for you, though?
That'd be nice, but I think he's going to be spending more time in some of the big swing states where there's some U.S. Senate races that are neck and neck. Probably that's where they'll be.
We were asking your opponent about the Disclose Act. He said that he would support it if unions had to fall under the same regulations. Any comment back on that?
They already do, and they would under the Disclose Act. The Disclose Act simply forces people to disclose who their donors are when they spend on ads, and that includes everybody. I also support, the constitutional amendment that would prevent all this outside spending, and the move to amend, or the Wolf Pact that's involved. All of it, it's got to go. It cannot be involved in our local elections, whether it's coming from unions or the people who support me or these private groups who are too scared to let you know who their donors are. I mean, at least if coming from a union, you know where the money's coming from. You know where that interest is coming from. It's these groups that have these made-up names that don't want you to know, and they're the ones doing the most damage to what I believe is our democracy. They're adding to this hotbed of cynicism that is counterproductive to the well-being of our society. And to treat it as some gimmick issue is just disingenuous. So.
I asked your opponent about the statistics that show, actually, since we've raised the income tax in Minnesota, more people are paying more income tax over $1 million, and the number of people in that bracket is actually up 6%. He says that's just a lagging indicator, and really people are leaving the state. Your reaction to that?
The whole idea of people are moving the state, there's a myth that's been busted by several news organizations. Thanks for coming. So it's an awkward talking point that doesn't make any sense anymore, and it's simply not true. I heard that when I was there voting to create that fourth tier income tax. I had businesses calling me, threatening me, saying, if you do this, we're going to have to move. And you know what? None of them moved. All the ones that actually called me have expanded locally. So that's what I see.
those are what the statistics are saying. You can't just count on one organization for your statistics. You got to bring them all together. You know, CNBC and Forbes named us, you know, top state to do business in over the past couple years. It's a big picture, not just these little cherry picking things that kind of myth has been busted.
And today you mentioned when we talked about MNsure, you were talking about that it was fear-mongering to talk about that MNsure is the problem, it's not the insurance rates are the problem. I mean, fear-mongering. Who are you accusing of fear-mongering here?
I think Dan Wolgma, running for Senate, he mentioned using it as a boogeyman. People have,
Let me restate that. That was not you who said that. That was some other candidate. But you've talked about MNsure and what needs to be done about that.
Right. Well, we've seen our opponents are trying to use MNsure as a buzzword, a negative buzzword, just like they're trying to turn liberal into something that was negative, or they started calling the Democratic Party the Democrat Party, or now the ACA is Obamacare, and then they turn MNsure. So they are trying to change what MNsure is, and people come up and they ask, my MNsure insurance, well, that doesn't make sense. You don't have MNsure insurance. MNsure is a marketplace. So we continuously have to explain what MNsure is. So that's what happens. They're using that program in another disingenuous way to some way of placing blame, and it's just not working. I think people are starting to see through that. They just have to remember, MNsure is not insurance. It's a place where you buy insurance through. So.
Anything else you want to add about how the campaign is going, or anything else you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to talk about today?
Yeah, I would. This is the first time in a long time where we've actually seen some candidates sending out false and negative ads from their own campaign. None of the Democrats at this table have done that. Two of the GOP, my opponent, and the Senate GOP have done that. There's enough outside money in this race, and it's just it's beyond disturbing. I didn't get to bring it up. It's very disingenuous. There's been some articles in the paper about it. It's been a long time since we've seen actual candidates themselves send out negative and attack pieces. Sadly, it's reached that point here, and I was hoping it wouldn't. With all the outside money spewing cynicism, we had enough of that. So I've just asked the calling candidates to knock it off. The outside money is doing just enough damage. So.
And was this the final debate, or you guys got a few more here?
Oh my gosh. Well, I know we have at least one more forum. It's kind of a neighborhood thing tonight. And then there's some less formal stuff. This would be, I think, the last time you'll see everybody at the same table.
So you're kind of your last big formal debate or forum between everybody.
Correct, from what I understand, yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time today, Zach.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for doing what you do.
All right. Okay, folks, that is our live report here. I'll step in front of the camera. You get to see my nifty reading glasses. That is our live report here from St. Cloud at the Rotary Clubs and St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce today put together this candidates forum, and you will be able to, of course, watch it. If you missed it, it plays back immediately on YouTube. If you're watching, in fact, right now, I think you can just go on the DVR button there below and back it up, and you can see the whole thing. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the UpTake, because remember, without your support, without your donations to the UpTake, we are not able to go out and cover these things. There's nobody else who goes out and covers the debates across the state, legislative, congressional. Those are the big debates this year. But in any other year, there would be other statewide races, and we're the ones that do that. We will be around to do that only if you support us. Go to theuptake.org, send us a donation. We've got Give to the Max Day coming up here very soon too, and there are ways that you can maybe buy us a lottery ticket, essentially, by donating and getting us a golden ticket that could get us thousands of dollars. So that's it from here in St. Cloud. I will be live on AM 950 this afternoon. We'll try to see if we can pull some the sound from this debate. And, of course, you may have already seen it, so you don't have to watch or listen, but hopefully you will. I'm Mike McEntee with the UpTake. We'll talk to you later.